Rashid had always wanted a home where he could feel both free and safe. For many years he worked long hours, saved carefully, and dreamed of a place that would finally belong to him. When he bought his house in a quiet neighborhood, he felt his dream was complete. The house was not huge, but it had charm. There were tall trees that gave shade in the summer, birds that sang in the morning, and a wide yard where Rashid often walked in peace. He wanted this house to reflect not only his comfort but also his pride. One part of the house bothered him. The entrance was open, and Rashid did not like the idea of people passing by and looking into his yard. He had always believed a home should have a gate, strong and welcoming, one that showed respect for the family inside. So after weeks of planning, he bought wood, nails, and paint. Every evening after work, Rashid measured, cut, and hammered with patience. His hands grew sore, but his heart was happy. At last, the gate was finished. It was tall but simple, made from polished wood with a firm frame. When Rashid stepped back to look at it, he smiled with satisfaction. The gate stood proud, not only as an entrance but as a symbol of his hard work. He imagined guests walking through it, neighbors nodding in approval, and his family feeling secure. To Rashid, it was perfect, but peace never lasts long when rules are written by others. 3 days after the gate was complete, Rashid found a paper taped to his front door. The paper was white with bold letters at the top. It was a notice from the Homeowners Association, the HOA. Rashid had heard of them before. They were a group of people from the neighborhood who created rules about houses, yards, and even colors of walls. The notice was short but strict. It said his gate had not been approved by the HOA. According to their rules, any changes to the exterior of a house needed written permission. The letter ordered Rashid to remove the gate within 7 days or face a fine. Rashid read the letter twice, then folded it. He did not panic. He thought it was a mistake. He told himself that once he explained, they would understand. After all, the gate was safe, simple, and inside his property. That evening, as Rashid watered the plants near the fence, his neighbor Ali walked past. Ali was an older man who often chatted with Rashid about gardens and weather. Rashid showed him the notice. Ali sighed and said, "Last year they sent me the same notice about my garden fence. I had painted it green, but they wanted it white. I had to repaint it or pay a fine." Rashid frowned. "But this gate is not hurting anyone. It makes the house look better." Ali shook his head. "That is not how the HOA thinks. They want things the same. Every house must look like the others. That is their rule." The next morning, Rashid was leaving for work when he noticed 3 men standing near his gate. They wore bright vests and carried clipboards. They looked official, though none of them smiled. One man, tall with a hard expression, stepped forward. "Good morning," the man said in a firm voice. "We are inspectors from the HOA. This gate is not approved. You must remove it before the end of the week." Rashid looked at them calmly. "This is my gate on my land. I built it myself. I will not remove it." The inspectors exchanged glances. One of them scribbled notes on his clipboard. The tall man spoke again. "If you refuse, there will be consequences." Rashid did not move. He placed his hand on the wooden frame of the gate and said, "Then I will face the consequences. But this gate will stay." The inspectors did not argue further. They turned and walked away, but Rashid knew this was only the start. That evening, Rashid sat on his porch and thought about the day. His heart was calm, but his mind was full of questions. Why should strangers decide what he could build on his own land? Why should his gate be a problem when it caused no harm? He thought about his family, about the long years he had worked to buy this home, and about the pride he felt when he built something with his own hands. He would not let anyone take that pride away. The next few days were tense. Rashid noticed neighbors watching from a distance. Some of them supported him quietly. Others seemed nervous, as if they feared the HOA themselves. Rashid continued his daily life, watering the garden, fixing small things around the house, and walking through his yard with quiet strength. Each time he looked at the gate, his resolve grew stronger. On the 5th day, a second letter came. This one was more serious. It said Rashid had violated the community guidelines. If the gate was not removed within 2 days, the HOA would send a team to take it down by force and charge him the cost. The letter ended with a warning. Further refusal could result in legal action. Rashid read the letter slowly. His hands tightened, but his voice stayed steady. He placed the letter on the table and whispered to himself, "This is my home. No one will take away what I built." The next morning, Rashid prepared himself. He woke up early, cleaned the yard, and polished the gate until it shined in the sunlight. He wanted the inspectors to see that he was not afraid. He wanted them to know that this gate was more than wood. It was his stand against control. When Ali passed by, he asked, "What will you do if they come?" Rashid answered, "If they come to remove my gate, I will build it again. If they break it, I will build it stronger. This is not about a piece of wood. This is about my right to protect my home." Ali looked at him with surprise and respect. "You are brave, Rashid. Not many people stand up to them." Rashid smiled faintly. "Sometimes silence is the same as surrender." "I cannot stay silent." The sun was setting when Rashid heard voices outside. He stepped onto the porch and saw the same 3 inspectors returning. They carried tools this time, and their expressions showed determination. The tall man pointed at the gate and said, "This is your last chance. Remove the gate or we will remove it ourselves." Rashid walked slowly toward them. His steps were steady, his voice firm. "This gate stays. You cannot take it from me." The inspectors stood still. They expected fear, but instead they saw strength. The tall man clenched his jaw, then lowered his tool. He spoke to the others, and after a short pause, they turned away once again. Rashid watched them leave, the sound of their footsteps fading into the night. He knew they would return, maybe with more power, maybe with stronger orders, but in his heart he felt no fear. He had made his choice. The gate stood tall behind him, glowing in the last light of the day. Rashid placed his hand on the wood and whispered, "This is only the beginning." Rashid woke up earlier than usual the next morning. The sun had just started to rise, painting the sky in soft orange and pink colors. The air was quiet, but his mind was not. He kept thinking about the inspectors who had come again with tools. Their warning echoed in his memory. They had left for now, but he knew they would return. The letter was clear, and the HOA had power in the community. Still, Rashid was not ready to give up. He walked outside with a cup of tea in his hand. The gate stood strong in the cool morning air. He touched the polished wood and whispered, "You will not fall easily." He felt a sense of pride, but also a sense of challenge. It was no longer just about one gate. It was about freedom to make choices in his own home. By noon, Ali came over carrying a small basket of fruits. He placed it on Rashid's porch and sat down. His face was worried. "I heard the inspectors went to the community office after leaving your house. They were not happy. They will not forget this." Rashid nodded slowly. "I know, but I cannot bow down so quickly." Ali leaned forward. "Listen, my friend. I respect your courage, but the HOA is not weak. They can fine you, they can even take you to court. I do not want to see you in trouble." Rashid gave a small smile. "Ali, when I built this gate, I was not only building wood and nails. I was building a stand for myself. If I remove it now, I will feel small in my own home." Ali sighed, knowing Rashid's mind would not change. "Then be ready. They will not stop." That same afternoon, Rashid received a letter in his mailbox. It was longer than the last ones. This time, the HOA listed the possible punishments for disobedience. There were heavy fines, suspension of community services, and even legal steps if he refused again. They gave him 3 days to comply. Rashid sat at his table reading the letter again and again. It was clear they were raising the pressure, but instead of fear, a new strength rose inside him. He thought of his father, who had taught him to work hard and never bow down to unfair treatment. He remembered his mother's words about protecting the family home at any cost. These memories gave him power. The next day, Rashid decided to prepare. If the inspectors came again, he wanted to be ready. He went to the hardware store and bought extra wood, metal hinges, and stronger bolts. When the shopkeeper asked why he needed so many supplies, Rashid only smiled and said, "I want to make something stronger." At home, he spent hours reinforcing the gate. He added extra support to the frame and tightened every bolt. The sound of his hammer echoed across the street. Neighbors peeked out of their windows, whispering among themselves. Some admired his courage, while others feared the HOA's reaction. But Rashid did not care. With each strike of the hammer, his resolve grew. In the evening, 2 neighbors came to speak with him. One was an old lady named Mariam, who lived across the street. She said softly, "I like your gate, Rashid. It makes your home look proud. But be careful. The HOA does not forgive easily." The second was a young man named Bilal. He looked at the gate with shining eyes and said, "You are brave. I wish I could stand up like this when they told me to cut down my tree." But I was afraid. Rashid placed his hand on Bilal's shoulder. Sometimes fear controls us, but if no one stands up, they will control everything. This is not only my fight, it is for all of us. That night, Rashid could not sleep well. He kept hearing the sound of footsteps outside, as if expecting the inspectors to return in the dark. But the street remained silent. Finally, he rose before dawn and began working again, adding one more layer of strength to his gait. On the third day, as promised in the letter, the inspectors returned. This time they brought more people. There were 5 of them in total, carrying not only clipboards but also larger tools. They parked a truck nearby, making it clear they intended to remove the gate by force. Rashid stood on his porch waiting calmly. He had dressed neatly, not like a man ready for a fight, but like a man ready for respect. The tall inspector, the same one as before, stepped forward. His voice was louder now. "This is your final notice. Remove the gate or we will remove it now." Rashid walked slowly down the steps and stood in front of the gate. His voice was steady. "This gate is mine. You will not touch it." The inspectors exchanged uneasy looks. The tall man waved his hand and 2 workers moved forward with tools. Rashid raised his hand and said firmly, "Stop." His eyes did not move away from the tall inspector. "If you take down this gate, I will build it again. If you break it, I will build it stronger. You cannot defeat my will." The workers froze. For a moment, silence filled the street. Neighbors gathered at their windows and doors, watching closely. Some even stepped outside, forming small groups at a distance. The air was heavy with tension. The tall inspector's jaw tightened. He knew the crowd was watching. If they forced the gate down, it might create anger among other residents. But if they left again, it would show weakness. He struggled to decide. Finally, he lowered his tool and said coldly, "We will report this. You will regret your decision." They turned back to the truck and left, but not before throwing sharp glances at Rashid. The crowd began whispering louder, some clapping quietly. Rashid felt a warm strength inside him. He had won another battle, though he knew the war was not over. That evening, Ali came over again. His face was full of mixed emotions. "You stood tall today, my friend." Everyone saw it. But now the HOA will be even angrier. They will not forgive this insult. Rashid looked at him calmly. "Then let them come. I am ready. They may have power on paper, but I have power in my heart, and I will not surrender." Days passed and the tension grew heavier. Rashid continued strengthening his gate, but he also began to think beyond it. He realized the HOA's power came from fear. Many neighbors obeyed not because they agreed, but because they were afraid of punishment. If more people stood up, the HOA would lose its control. So Rashid began to speak with his neighbors. He told them, "If they can remove my gate today, they can remove your tree tomorrow, your fence the next day, your garden the day after. We must not let them decide everything for us." Some neighbors nodded, encouraged by his words. Others were still too afraid. But the seed of resistance had been planted. One evening, Bilal came running to Rashid's porch. He was excited. "I heard some families talking. They said your courage gave them hope. They said maybe it is time to question the HOA rules." Rashid smiled. "Then it is working. This is not only about one man against the HOA. It is about all of us against unfair rules." The days moved forward, but Rashid knew the storm was still building. The HOA was silent for now, but silence often hides stronger plans. He kept working, kept speaking, and kept standing tall. His gate was not just wood anymore. It had become a wall of pride, a symbol of freedom, and a spark of rebellion in the hearts of his neighbors. On a quiet night, as Rashid stood alone by the gate under the moonlight, he whispered to himself, "This is only the beginning. They will return, but when they return, I will not be alone." Rashid stood under the morning sun, his hands resting on the wooden gate that had now become a part of his soul. The battles with the inspectors had left him stronger, not weaker. He had refused their warnings, and his gate still stood tall. Yet deep inside he knew they would not stop. The HOA had been embarrassed, and people who held power never liked to lose. That week, Rashid noticed the change in his neighborhood. Neighbors who once only nodded politely now stopped to speak with him. Some whispered words of encouragement. Others warned him to be careful, but all of them looked at his gate with respect. It was no longer just his gate. It was becoming a symbol of standing against control. One evening, Bilal walked over carrying a notebook. His face was serious but hopeful. "I have been thinking," he said. "If the HOA is allowed to remove your gate, they will keep growing stronger. Maybe we need to show them we are not afraid. Maybe we need to stand together." Rashid listened carefully. "You are right, Bilal, but many are still afraid. They fear fines, they fear trouble. If I fall, they will return to silence. That is why I must not only keep the gate but make it even stronger." Bilal's eyes widened. "You mean to build it again?" Rashid smiled. "No, I mean to build it bigger. If they cannot tolerate this, then let them see something even greater." That night, Rashid stayed awake, sketching designs on paper. He planned not only to rebuild but to expand. He imagined taller posts, stronger wood, and iron decorations that gave dignity. The more he planned, the more his heart filled with determination. The next morning, Rashid went to the hardware market. He bought stronger wood, iron rods, fresh paint, and heavy bolts. The shopkeeper looked curious. "You are working on something big, Rashid?" Rashid nodded calmly. "Yes, something bigger than before." When he returned home, neighbors watched as he unloaded the materials. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others smiled with hidden pride. Mariam, the old woman across the street, called out, "Rashid, are you not afraid they will come again?" Rashid replied gently, "Fear is not stronger than freedom. If I give up now, fear wins. But if I build again, we all win." And so, he began. For days, Rashid worked from morning until night. He dug deeper foundations for the posts. He lifted heavy beams with slow strength. Sweat poured from his forehead, but his spirit did not tire. He worked with focus, as if each nail he hammered was a declaration of resistance. Bilal often came to help, holding wood steady or mixing paint. Sometimes children from the street gathered, watching him work with bright eyes. "Why are you building again?" one child asked. Rashid looked at the boy and said, "Because when something is taken from you, you do not hide. You rise again, stronger than before." Slowly, the new gate began to rise. It was taller, wider, and far more powerful. The wood was polished until it shined in the sunlight. The iron designs gave it a noble appearance. It looked less like a simple gate and more like a statement carved in steel and wood. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. People whispered about Rashid's boldness. Some feared the HOA's next reaction, but others felt inspired. In quiet conversations, families began to say, "If Rashid can stand, why can't we?" But the HOA was not silent. A week after Rashid started his work, another letter came. This time it was sharper than ever before. It accused him of direct defiance and threatened heavy daily fines. The letter warned that a legal case was being prepared. They demanded immediate removal of all construction. Rashid read the letter carefully. His hands did not shake, his heart did not break. Instead, he pinned the letter on the wall inside his house and went back outside to continue building. That afternoon, 3 inspectors returned. They stood in disbelief as they saw the new structure rising higher than the first. The tall inspector's face turned red with anger. "Are you mocking us, Rashid? We ordered you to remove it, yet you make it bigger?" Rashid put down his hammer and faced them. His voice was calm but carried power. "You told me to remove what is mine. I chose instead to strengthen it. You cannot scare me and you cannot own my home." The inspectors muttered among themselves, writing furiously on their clipboards. One of them snapped pictures. The tall inspector shouted, "This will not end well for you." Rashid only replied, "Then let it not end well. I do not build for you. I build for my home, my family, and my right to stand." The inspectors left, but their anger was clear. Neighbors who had been watching clapped quietly once they were gone. Ali came over, shaking his head but smiling. "You are not only building a gate, Rashid. You are building courage in all of us." Rashid placed his hand on the tall post of the gate. "If courage spreads, then this gate has already done more than I dreamed." The work continued. Each day, Rashid added something new. By the end of the second week, the new gate was complete. It was tall and wide, with strong iron bolts and firm wooden panels. At the top, he added a simple carving of a rising sun. To him, it symbolized hope and new beginnings. When the neighbors saw it finished, they gathered around. Some admired the strength, others touched the wood as if it carried power. Mariam whispered, "It looks like a fortress." "It looks like freedom," Bilal laughed. "It is not just a gate. It is a wall of courage." That evening, Rashid sat on his porch with a cup of tea. looking at the gate glowing in the golden light of sunset. He felt proud, but he also felt ready. He knew the HOA would return with stronger measures. They had been challenged twice, and now their pride was wounded. But Rashid was no longer the only one standing. The eyes of the neighborhood had opened. His fight was becoming their fight. The very next morning, proof of this came. A group of neighbors knocked on his door. They included Mariam, Bilal, and 3 other families. They told Rashid they wanted to support him. One man said, "We are tired of being silent. If they take you to court, we will stand as witnesses. If they fine you, we will help. You are not alone anymore." Rashid felt a deep warmth in his heart. "Thank you, my friends. Together we are stronger. If they try to remove what belongs to us, they will see we are not afraid." But not everyone was supportive. A few neighbors warned him in whispers. "Be careful, Rashid. The HOA has connections. They may try to humiliate you or break you through the law." Rashid listened but did not waver. He answered simply, "A man without courage is already broken. I will not live in fear." That week, Rashid noticed new movements. Strange cars parked near his house at night. Letters arrived more frequently, some carrying heavier threats. One letter even mentioned possible restriction of his access to community services like water management and waste collection. It was clear the HOA was preparing a larger strike, but Rashid did not stop. Instead, he began preparing speeches for his neighbors, encouraging them to think about their own freedom. He reminded them that the HOA was powerful only because people gave in to fear. Rules are made to bring harmony, he told them, but when rules become chains, they must be questioned. By the end of the month, the street was buzzing with conversations about Rashid's stand. Children played near the new gate as if it were a landmark. Adults debated in low voices. And everywhere, the spirit of courage was growing. One night, as Rashid stood under the moonlight looking at his tall gate, he thought about what lay ahead. He knew the HOA would not forgive him for this bold act. He knew inspectors, fines, and even lawyers might soon be on his doorstep. But he also knew something more powerful had begun. His neighbors had seen strength, and they would not easily forget it. He whispered to himself, "This is not the end. This is the rise." The morning was unusually quiet when Rashid opened his door. The sun shone gently. The air was still and birds sang in the trees, but Rashid felt a heavy weight in the silence. He walked to his gate, placed his hand on the tall wooden post, and thought about the battles he had fought so far. The inspectors had come again and again, but each time they left without victory. His gate had grown bigger, stronger, and now stood as a symbol for his entire street. Yet in his heart, Rashid knew a larger battle was coming. By noon it arrived. A man in a neat suit knocked on his door. He carried a leather briefcase and spoke with formal words. "Good day, Mr. Rashid. I am here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. You have ignored repeated notices. The HOA is now taking legal action. Here are the official documents." He handed Rashid a thick envelope. Without another word, the man turned and walked away. Rashid stood still, holding the papers in his hand, feeling the seriousness of what was unfolding. He went inside, sat at his wooden table, and slowly opened the envelope. The documents were filled with strict language. They stated that Rashid was in violation of community rules. They listed fines that could reach thousands. They warned that if he refused again, the HOA would file a case in court to demand removal of the gate. Rashid read each page carefully. His jaw tightened, but his spirit did not bend. Later that day, Ali came to visit. He saw the papers spread on the table and sighed deeply. "I warned you this would happen, my friend. The HOA is powerful. Court cases are expensive and exhausting. Are you ready for this fight?" Rashid looked up with calm eyes. "I did not start this fight, Ali. But if they take me to court for protecting my own home, then I will face them. I will not bow down." Ali shook his head with worry. "I admire you, Rashid, but this is not a small matter anymore." Rashid smiled faintly. "I know, but I also know that fear is their greatest weapon. If I surrender now, the gate will fall, and with it my dignity. That is a price I cannot pay." Word of the legal notice spread quickly across the neighborhood. Some neighbors came to see Rashid, offering quiet support. Bilal was the first. "We will stand with you," he said firmly. "If they try to break you in court, we will speak for you." We saw everything with our own eyes. Mariam, the old woman across the street, also came with her cane in hand. She said softly, "They think we are weak, Rashid. But you have given us courage. I will not stay silent if they take you to court." Others nodded in agreement. The strength of Rashid's stand was spreading like fire. What had begun as one man's gate was now becoming a community shield. Still, the HOA did not back down. 2 days later, 3 inspectors returned, but this time they did not carry tools. Instead, they carried cameras, recording every detail of the gate. They measured its height, its width, and its distance from the road. The tall inspector, his face colder than before, spoke loudly so the neighbors could hear. "This is all evidence for court. He will lose, and when he loses, this gate will come down." Rashid stood by the gate, calm and unshaken. He looked directly at the inspector and said, "You may bring papers, you may bring cameras, but you will never break what is built in my heart." The inspector did not reply. He only ordered his team to finish their work, and then they left. That night, Rashid gathered with some neighbors in his yard. They sat in a circle under the light of a small lantern. He spoke clearly, his voice steady. "The HOA thinks this fight is only about a gate, but we know it is about more. It is about our right to choose, our right to live without fear. If they succeed against me, tomorrow it will be your trees, your fences, your gardens. We must not let this happen." The neighbors listened with serious faces. Bilal clenched his fist and said, "We will not let you stand alone, Rashid. If you go to court, we go with you." Mariam nodded slowly. "I am old, but I have lived long enough to know when something is wrong. This is wrong, and we must resist it." The group grew silent for a moment, then together they agreed that they would speak out, no matter what came next. The following week, Rashid received another letter. This time it came directly from the community's legal office. The case was official now. The HOA had filed documents in court demanding the removal of the gate. They claimed Rashid was breaking the harmony of the neighborhood and setting a bad example. The court hearing was scheduled for the next month. Ali visited again, his face full of concern. "Court is a serious place, Rashid. They have lawyers' money and influence. How will you fight them?" Rashid answered calmly, "With truth, and with the voices of those who are ready to speak." From that day onward, Rashid began preparing. He collected all the notices, all the letters, and kept them in order. He took photos of his gate showing how strong and safe it was. He even asked some neighbors to write simple notes saying they supported him. But Rashid did not stop there. He continued improving his gate. If the HOA thought they could frighten him into giving up, they would instead see him making it even stronger. He added a new coat of paint shining in the sunlight. He planted flowers along the side, so the gate did not only look powerful but also beautiful. The more they pushed him, the more determined he became. One evening, as Rashid hammered the final piece of iron into place, Bilal said with a smile, "They wanted to remove your gate, but look at it now. It has become the pride of the street." Rashid looked at his work and said, "This is not just a gate anymore. This is a voice." As the hearing day grew closer, tension in the neighborhood rose. Some families feared the HOA might punish them if they openly supported Rashid, but still they gave him quiet encouragement. Others grew bold, openly speaking about their own frustrations with the HOA. For the first time, people were questioning the rules. For the first time, they were asking if the HOA's power had gone too far. The HOA sensed this shift. To regain control, they sent more warnings, threatening not only Rashid but anyone who openly supported him. Some neighbors stepped back in fear, but many stayed firm. Rashid's courage had already planted strength in their hearts. On the night before the court hearing, Rashid stood by his gate in silence. The moonlight touched the polished wood and the iron designs. He felt the cool wind brush his face, but inside he felt a fire burning. This was no longer only his battle. This was a test of dignity for the entire community. Ali came quietly and stood beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Ali said softly, "You are walking into a storm tomorrow, Rashid. But remember, storms also bring change. Whatever happens, you have already won something greater. You have won respect." Rashid looked at his gate one last time before going inside. "Tomorrow they will hear not just my voice, but the voice of everyone who believes in freedom. They think they can scare us with rules and papers, but we will show them that courage cannot be removed." And so as dawn approached, Rashid prepared for the next stage of his fight. The inspectors had failed, the threats had failed, and now the HOA was turning to the law. Yet Rashid stood ready, not as one man, but as the face of a growing resistance. The gate, tall and strong, waited silently behind him, ready to face the storm together. The day of the court hearing arrived. Rashid woke before sunrise, his heart calm but his mind sharp. He washed his face, prayed quietly, and dressed in his plain but neat clothes. Outside, the air was cool and the street was silent. The tall gate stood behind him like a loyal companion, polished and strong. Rashid placed his hand on the wood, as if drawing strength from it before stepping away. Ali came to drive him to the courthouse. He parked in front of Rashid's home and called out, "Are you ready, my friend?" Rashid gave a firm nod. "Ready." As the car moved down the street, Rashid noticed something surprising. Several neighbors stood outside their houses watching him leave. Some waved silently. Others placed their hands on their hearts. Even Miriam, leaning on her cane, raised her hand in quiet support. Rashid felt his courage grow with every gesture. The courthouse was large and serious. People walked quickly through the tall doors, their shoes clicking on the polished floor. Rashid and Ali entered together, holding the bundle of documents and photos. Inside, the air felt heavy with order and authority. In the courtroom, Rashid saw the HOA representatives sitting on one side. They wore dark suits and spoke quietly among themselves. The inspectors were also there, including the tall one who had measured his gate. Their faces were sharp and confident, as if they were certain victory belonged to them. On the other side, Rashid took his seat. He felt alone at first, but soon the door opened again. Bilal entered, followed by several neighbors. They had come to stand with him, even though the HOA had warned them not to. Miriam also arrived, walking slowly but with determination. She smiled at Rashid and whispered, "You are not alone." The judge entered and everyone stood. Silence filled the room as the hearing began. The HOA lawyer stood first. His voice was smooth and powerful. He spoke about rules, harmony, and the importance of following community standards. He showed documents pointing out the exact rule Rashid had broken by building his gate. He argued that Rashid's actions encouraged rebellion, that if one man could break the rule, soon no one would respect the HOA. The lawyer ended by saying, "Your Honor, we demand that the court order immediate removal of the gate and require Mr. Rashid to pay heavy fines. Anything less will damage the unity of this neighborhood." Rashid listened carefully. His hands rested calmly on the table. When the lawyer finished, the judge turned to him. "Mr. Rashid, you may speak." Rashid stood slowly. He was not a lawyer, and he had no polished speech, but his words carried honesty. "Your Honor, I built that gate not to break rules, but to protect my home. The inspectors came without care. They entered my land without respect. The HOA sent threats but never listened. This gate is not a danger to anyone. It is safe, strong, and beautiful. Many of my neighbors admire it. I ask you to see that this is not about rules alone. This is about fairness, dignity, and the right of a man to feel safe in his own home." He placed the photos on the table. They showed the strong wood, the secure iron, the flowers he had planted beside it. He also showed letters from neighbors who supported him. "This is not just my voice. Others here believe the same." The judge listened quietly, then allowed witnesses to speak. Bilal was the first. He told the court how the inspectors had come again and again, how Rashid had faced them with calm strength. He explained how the gate had become a source of pride for the street, not a problem. "We respect Rashid because he stood for what is right. This is not rebellion. This is fairness." Then Miriam spoke. Her voice was slow but clear. "I have lived here for many years. I have seen rules used to keep peace, but I have also seen rules used to control. Rashid has harmed no one. His gate gives us courage. If this court orders its removal, it will not only take wood and iron, it will take away our hope." Other neighbors also gave short words of support. Some were nervous, but their sincerity was strong. The HOA lawyer tried to dismiss their voices. He argued that rules must be the same for everyone, and that personal feelings could not stand above written agreements. He looked at Rashid and said coldly, "This man thinks he is bigger than the community." But Rashid only replied calmly, "I am not bigger than the community. I am part of it, and the community is standing here with me." The judge asked many questions, studied the documents, and listened to every side. The hearing went on for hours. The tension grew heavy. Finally, the judge raised his hand. The room became silent. "In this matter," the judge began, "we must balance rules with fairness. The HOA is correct that agreements matter, but it is also true that agreements should serve the people, not crush them. I have seen evidence that this gate is safe, and I have heard many voices from the community that support it. Therefore, I rule that Mr. Rashid may keep his gate. The HOA's demand for removal is denied. As for fines, they will not be applied." For a moment, the room was frozen. Then whispers spread and relief filled Rashid's chest. Bilal clapped him on the back. Mariam smiled with tears in her eyes, and the neighbors breathed freely again. The HOA representatives looked shocked. The tall inspector clenched his jaw but said nothing. They had lost. Outside the courthouse, Rashid stood with his supporters. Reporters who had heard about the unusual case asked questions, and Rashid answered with calm dignity. This was never only about a gate. It was about standing for what is fair. Today we showed that unity is stronger than fear. When he returned home, Rashid stood before his gate once again. This time it did not feel like just a structure of wood and iron. It felt alive, carrying the spirit of the people who had stood with him. Children ran up to touch it, neighbors smiled as they passed by, and the street seemed brighter. That evening, Rashid invited his neighbors to gather in his yard. They shared food, tea, and laughter. They told stories of courage and hope. For the first time in many years, the community felt truly united. As the night grew late, Ali whispered to Rashid, "You have changed this place forever. The HOA wanted to make you small, but now you stand taller than ever." Rashid looked at the gate glowing softly in the lantern light. "It was never about being tall," he replied. "It was about being firm. And when one man is firm, others find their strength too." From that day on, the HOA inspectors never came again. The gate remained where it was, stronger and prouder than before. It became a symbol not only of Rashid's stand, but also of the power of a community that chose courage over fear. And whenever someone passed by, they would look at the tall gate and remember the man who refused to bow, who faced threats with calm strength, and who built not just a gate but a lasting bond of unity.